We just can't count on you for something like this, sweetheart. My mother said it like she was patting bad news in bubble wrap. I was at my drafting table in East Austin, pencil behind my ear, the smell of cedar stains still clinging to my hands from a farmhouse table I'd been restoring for a client. The late light off Cesar Chavez turned the glass jars of paintbrushes into little lanterns. It's Nana's 70th in Charleston, Mom continued, careful, rehearsed. Elise is taking point. It's going to be intimate. Intimate, I repeated, watching the pencil's shadow on my palm. As in immediate family? Pause. You know how these things are. Travel, kids, logistics. We'll send photos. Translation: you're out. My name is Madeline Hart, but everyone calls me Maddie. I'm 23. I run a scrappy little design and staging studio called Finch and Kiln. I turn tired bungalows into listings people actually fight over, and I'm good at it. Not loud, not Instagram fancy, just steady. The kind of steady nobody notices until something breaks. When the call ended, my phone buzzed again. Jasmine, my best friend since 8th grade orchestra. You okay? He texted. Define okay, I wrote back. She sent a screenshot before I could finish the thought. A Facebook comment thread under my aunt's post about Charleston plans. With Elise. My older sister by 8 years, Elise Caraway, now married to a Westlake Hills orthodontist and a walking Pinterest board, holding court. We just need this one to be low stress. Elise had replied to someone asking about the guest list. Maddie's in a transitional season. It's a lot for her right now. Transitional season. There were hearts and so wise mama. Replies from her mom group friends who barely know me. Then a line from one of our cousins. Didn't she get evicted? Someone told me she's couch surfing again. Elise chimed back with a little lemon slice emoji and, it's complicated. We love her though. I stared at that like it was a cracked tile I'd have to pry up with a putty knife. The lie wasn't even creative. It was just convenient. Easier to sell me as unreliable than to admit she didn't want me there because I ruined her version of perfect. I put my phone face down on the table and listened to the hum of I-35 like distant surf. My studio apartment was small. Exposed brick, a salvaged farmhouse door as a headboard, plants that somehow stayed alive under my haphazard care. But it was mine. The rent was paid early. The invoices were organized. Transitional season, my ass. I could list the receipts for every time I made their lives simpler. The weekends I babysat Sloan and Reed, just until brunch ran long. The nursery mural I painted at midnight because Elise decided the taupe was too sad 2 days before her due date. The $600 I slipped to Mom when Dad's truck needed a timing belt. The times Elise turned those quiet gifts into punchlines. Maddie's the creative one, said with a smile sharp enough to cut fruit. My phone lit up again. A voice memo this time, Jasmine, because she knows I won't answer when I'm mad. Babe, take a breath. Her voice filled my little room. You know who you are. Also, for the record, you were early on rent last month and your landlord has you on her tenants who make my life easy list. I know because I met her at the farmer's market and she brought you up out of nowhere like you were her favorite niece. I smiled despite the ache behind my ribs. Jasmine always knows where the light switches are. I opened Instagram out of habit and there she was. Elise on her stories, swiping through mood boards for Charleston, oyster linens, monogrammed tote bags, a live jazz trio in some courtyard strung with cafe lights. Keeping it intimate, she wrote in a cursive font. A boomerang of Sloan, 7 and gap-toothed, twirling in their sunken living room. Auntie E knows how to throw a party. And E. Like I was the one who couldn't be trusted with a calendar invite. My jaw tightened. The thing about narrative is, if you tell it often enough, people stop checking the facts. They stop asking when the story was written who benefits from it staying the same. They just repeat it at barbecues until it hardens. I flipped my phone over and pulled a bank envelope from the second drawer of my drafting table. The paper was still warm from the printer at the credit union. The ink smelled faintly metallic. Purchase documents. A closing date circled in blue. My name in neat black type next to a line that made my heart leap every time I read it. Owner. Nobody in my family knew. Not Mom, not Dad, and definitely not Elise with her caption fonts and lemon emojis. I hadn't told them about the duplex on Zavala Street, about the ridiculous interest rate I fought down, about the sleepless weeks running numbers on a yellow legal pad until the math finally loved me back. I slid the papers back into the envelope and tucked it under my cutting mat, A private miracle in cardstock and signatures. Another buzz. A new text from an unknown number with a Charleston area code. Hey Maddie. It's Arden, from the catering company Elise is using next month. Quick question about headcount and, actually I should probably ask you directly. Are you coming or? The 3 dots pulsed as she typed more, then disappeared. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred on the black glass. Under the drafting lamp, the envelope's corner caught a strip of light like a match head. I wasn't invited to their party. They had no idea I was about to host one of my own. Arden's text sat on my screen like a blinking cursor, waiting for me to decide who I wanted to be. I didn't reply. Instead, the next morning I put on a navy jumpsuit that made me feel like I could fix anything and drove to a squat brick title company off South Lamar where the coffee is bad and the pens are chained to the counter like state secrets. The closer slid a folder across fake mahogany. Sign here, here and initial by the disclosures. His tie had tiny sailboats on it. He said my name like it already belonged on a mailbox. I signed until my hand cramped, the way you do when you're choosing a future on paper. When it was done, he dropped a brass ring into my palm. 2 keys. One shiny, one old enough to have history in its teeth. Congratulations, Ms. Hart, he said, and for a second I saw 13-year-old me paint on my elbows, imagining a door that would open because I turned the right key. I drove straight to Zavala Street. The duplex looked exactly like the listing photos and nothing like them. Sun catching on the wavy glass of the original windows, a hackberry throwing dappled shade across the porch. The faint smell of laundry and dust in the entry like every grandmother's house I'd ever loved. Unit mine was small, arched doorway, built-in shelves, a stubborn kitchen drawer that stuck halfway like it had opinions. Unit B, future Airbnb, future monthly lease, future something, had a sunroom the color of weak tea and a view of a backyard that needed one decisive Saturday and a truckload of mulch. Jasmine met me with a roll of blue tape and a bag of breakfast tacos. Owner, she sang, handing me a taco like an anointing. Let's make a list. We did what we always do, turned chaos into bullet points. Replace the warped baseboard under the sink. Sand the door that scrapes on the threshold. Patch the hairline crack above the fireplace so the first thing people notice is the mantle, not the flaw. Paint colors got names. Rain barrel for the living room, caraway seed for the cabinets, a deep green for the front doors that would photograph like promise. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. Unknown number. Charleston area code. I let it go to voicemail. We worked until the to-do list was a confetti of blue tabs, until the rooms felt less like someone else's, and more like waiting for me. The old key fit Unit B's back door with a little wiggle and an audible sigh, the way tired things yield when you insist gently. When I finally checked my phone, there were 2 new messages from Arden. Hi Maddie. Arden again with Palmetto and Pine Catering. Elise gave me your number as the backup card on file for heaters and the band's overtime. Just confirming we can run those if needed. Thanks. Followed by another 10 minutes later. Ignore that? Dr. Lyle's card declined just now. Probably a bank hold, I'm sure. Elise said you're the organized one with the reliable card, so we're all good to use yours, right? I stared at the wind-chapped paint on the back door until it resolved into a question. How many times had I let that story cash checks in my name? I called Arden. She answered on the first ring, bright and brisk. Hey Arden. This is Madeline Hart. Quick thing. I won't be attending the event in Charleston. Please remove my number and my card from anything related to it. If you need a payment method, you'll want to follow up with Elise Caraway or her husband, Evan Lyle. A microscopic pause. Then a professional smile I could hear. Of course. Thanks for the clarification. And Arden. I added, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. If someone told you I'd authorize charges, they weren't telling you the truth. Another pause. Noted. We hung up. I tucked the phone into my back pocket and felt my heartbeat in my thumb, the way I always do after I redraw a boundary that should have been obvious. By lunch, Jasmine had Unit A's cabinet doors off their hinges and I'd learned exactly how much plaster dust can live in your eyebrows. We ate tacos on inverted paint buckets and argued about whether the hallway needed art or a vintage runner. The light shifted across the hardwood like a slow tide. For an hour life was simple. Measure, cut, fit, repeat. Then my mother called. Hi honey, Marilyn's voice, syrupy and soft. We're just finalizing details for Nana's thing. Elise said you were Busy. Busy like a toddler with a sticker book. I am, I said. I closed on the duplex. A beat. The what? On Zavala. 2 units. I'm living in A, renting B. Another empty beat like her brain needed to buffer. Well, she said finally, landing on a thin smile I could hear. That's ambitious. Ambitious, the cousin of unrealistic, which is the neighbor of won't last. Also, I said before she could pivot, please make sure no vendors have my number. I'm not a backup card. Oh, Maddie. Nobody's asking you to pay for anything, she said too quickly like a waitress denying a spill. It's all handled. Great, I said and let the silence do the rest. After we hung up, Jasmine whistled low. Well, apparently everything is handled. Jasmine leaned her head against the bare cabinet box. Translation, they got caught trying to handle it with your wallet. I laughed, but it stuck in my throat. When the sun started to drop, we took a break and sat on the front steps with Topo Chicos. A couple with a scruffy terrier walked by and waved. The hackberry dropped a leaf into my lap. I felt for the first time in a long time like I wasn't performing competence for anyone. I was just living it. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from an unknown Austin number. Ms. Hart? This is Lila from Conger Realty. I manage the property on Lakeview where your sister's family rents. Heads up, their landlord is putting the house on the market next month. Showings will start soon. Elise asked me for your contact because she said you help her with transitions. I figured it was better to go straight to you. I read it twice. Jasmine leaned in, eyebrows up. Well. The next buzz was Instagram. Elise, a boomerang of silver patio heaters flickering under a string of lights in a Charleston courtyard. Caption, crisis averted. Nothing like family pulling together. Even the flaky ones can surprise you. Winking face sparkles. Even the flaky ones. I looked at my keys. The old one and the new heavy in my palm. They would tell whatever story kept their world tidy. I had a different one now. Written in deeds and doorways and the quiet arithmetic of rent checks that clear. I slid the keys back into my pocket, stood and taped a fresh blue tab to Unit B's doorframe. New list, I said to Jasmine. We're going to make this place kid-proof. The rain came that night, the slow Texas kind that smells like asphalt and iron, and I lay awake listening to it drum the tin awning outside Unit A's kitchen window. Around midnight, my phone lit up with Elise's name. I let it go to voicemail. In the morning, there were 3 missed calls and 1 message, her voice syrup-sweet in a way that always meant she wanted something. Maddie, hey, so, bit of an unexpected situation. We just found out the Lakeview place is going on the market. Total nightmare. The kids are upset, we're scrambling, and I know you've got your new property project going. Thought maybe we could talk. She drew out the last word like it was a bridge she was inviting me to cross. I made coffee strong enough to wake the dead and listened again while leaning against the counter. She hadn't mentioned Unit B, not yet, but I could hear the shape of the ask. By 8 a.m. Jasmine was knocking, holding 2 paper bags from the bakery down the street. Cinnamon rolls, she announced. For fortifying yourself against whatever that was last night. We sat cross-legged on the floor of Unit B's empty living room, sugar on our fingers, and I told her about the voicemail. Let me guess, she said, tearing her roll in half. She'll call it just a temporary arrangement, and 6 months later, you'll still be tripping over Elsa doll heads in the hallway. Not this time, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed myself. The thing is, I liked Sloan and Reed. I liked their sticky hands and the way they lit up when they saw me. It wasn't their fault their mother treated me like an optional upgrade in the family package. I could already picture the conversation Elise wanted. How it would start with flattery, you're so good with the kids, then slide into guilt, it's just until we get sorted, and end with the assumption I'd say yes. As I always had. The rain cleared by afternoon and I decided to stop picturing and start preparing. I walked through Unit B with a yellow legal pad, making a real kid-proofing list this time. Outlet covers, cabinet locks, a decent rug for the living room to muffle the sound of Lego avalanches. I was halfway through jotting secure bookshelves to wall, when the front door swung open without a knock. Elise. She stood there in skinny jeans and a raincoat that looked like it cost more than my first car, hair perfect despite the weather. You changed the locks, she said like it was a personal insult. It's my building, I replied. Her eyes swept the room, the taped-off spots, the scuffed floors. Wow. You're really investing in this place. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone even. I live here now. She smiled the way you smile at a child's art project. Fond but faintly patronizing. So listen, the Lakeview situation's a mess. We've got about 30 days. And the kids just adore you. It would mean so much if we could stay here. Just for a little while. I let the silence stretch until she shifted her weight. It's available, I said finally. $1,800 a month, first and last up front, plus a security deposit. Her mouth actually dropped. You're joking. Nope. Market rate, family discount already included. You'd charge your own sister rent? You'd ask your own sister to host you for free? I countered. The raincoat swished as she folded her arms. You know, Mom's right. You've changed. I met her gaze. Yeah. I have keys now. She left without another word, the scent of her expensive perfume lingering in the doorway. By the time the sun dipped low, my phone pinged with a text from her. We'll take it. Move-in date? I typed back one word. Friday. Jasmine, reading over my shoulder, grinned. Kid-proofing just got real. Friday morning came bright and sharp, the kind of Texas winter day where the air feels like it's been rinsed clean. I stood on the porch of Unit B with a clipboard in one hand, keys in the other. The lease was printed and ready, 3 copies, each with a yellow sticky note marking where to sign. Elise's SUV pulled up at 9:03 a.m., packed so tightly the kids' faces were pressed against the glass. Sloane waved like she was flagging down a parade float. Reed just grinned, his gap-toothed smile making me forget for half a second the knots in my stomach. Elise stepped out in yoga pants and aviators, looking like she'd just come from a bar class instead of a hurried move. So this is it, she said, scanning the front yard. This is it, I echoed and held out the clipboard. She glanced at it, eyebrows lifting. You're seriously making me sign a lease? That's how rentals work, I said, keeping my tone neutral. First month, last month, and the deposit. She sighed like I'd just asked her to chop her own firewood. Fine. She signed with a flourish, passing the pen back like it had burned her fingers. The movers I'd hired, carried in the boxes while I walked the kids through their new space. Sloane immediately claimed the sunroom as her art studio, which I didn't have the heart to correct. Reed found the tiny closet under the stairs and announced it was now his secret base. I'd spent the past 3 days making sure this place didn't feel like a bare-bones rental. New curtains, fresh paint in warm tones, a rug thick enough to muffle any noise Elise's voice might make when she was venting on the phone to her friends. I'd even stocked the kitchen with a welcome basket, fruit, coffee, and a loaf of bread from the bakery Jasmine swore could solve most of life's problems. Elise noticed it, of course. Well, that's nice of you, she said, as if generosity were a limited resource I'd somehow wasted on her. It's part of the move-in package, I replied. By noon, the kids were chasing each other in the backyard, the movers were gone, and Elise stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. I'll have the first rent check for you tonight, she said. But just so you know, I still think it's weird. What's weird? Charging family. Acting like this is a business deal. It is a business deal, I said, locking eyes with her. That's why it's going to work. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled, small, sharp, and walked back inside without another word. I stood on the porch for a while, listening to the sound of the kids' laughter spilling out of the yard. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. But it felt like something sturdier, like the first nail in a frame that would hold. That evening, just before sunset, Elise knocked on my door. Not a gentle knock. The kind that says I'm here and I'm not going away until you open. I let her in. She was holding an envelope like it might bite her. First month, last month, and the deposit, she said, handing it over. I slid the check out halfway, enough to see the numbers, then put it back. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Her eyes wandered around my place. The old oak desk under the window, the thrifted armchair I'd reupholstered in navy velvet, the kitchen shelves lined with vintage jars. You've done well for yourself, she said in the tone people use when they've just realized they underestimated you. It's coming together, I replied, pouring 2 glasses of sweet tea. Want one? She hesitated, then nodded, sitting at my small round table. The kids love the place. Reed's obsessed with that little closet under the stairs. He's calling it his spy HQ. I smiled despite myself. Sounds like him. For a few minutes we sat in something that almost felt like sisterhood, swapping quick stories about Sloane's school projects, about the weirdly aggressive squirrels in the backyard. But then Elise tilted her head and said, "You know, Mom still thinks you should have just let us stay for free. She says it's what family does." I took a slow sip of tea. Family also respects boundaries. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Boundaries are one thing. But you're making money off your own sister. I met her gaze. I'm providing a home for my own sister in a neighborhood you couldn't afford otherwise. It's fair. She looked like she wanted to argue more, but Reed's voice floated in from the yard. Something about needing emergency backup for his spy mission, and she stood up. "Thanks for the tea," she said, her voice cooler now. After she left, I sat at the table with the envelope in front of me. It wasn't just paper and ink. It was proof that the story Elise liked to tell about me was cracking. Not a loser. Not unstable. Not in a transitional season. I was her landlord. And that title came with a kind of leverage I'd never had before. The next few weeks settled into a strange rhythm. Most days I'd hear the muffled chaos of breakfast in Unit B, cartoon theme songs, the whir of a blender, Reed shouting about missing socks. By mid-morning the place would go quiet when Elise dropped the kids at school. We passed each other in the driveway often enough to keep up the appearance of civility. She'd wave, I'd wave back, and we'd both keep walking. No invitations for coffee. No lingering chats. But I noticed little things. Like how she started sweeping her porch more often when clients came by to see my design work in Unit A. Or how she suddenly began posting Instagram stories of our cozy rental, with captions like, "Making it ours." As though she'd picked the place, not me. One Saturday morning I was hauling in a roll of sisal carpet for a client when I heard Sloane's voice from the yard. "Aunt Maddie. Mommy says you help people fix broken houses." Elise, standing nearby, gave a tight smile. "Something like that," she said quickly, steering Sloane toward the house. I knew that look. The one she got when the narrative was slipping out of her hands. Later that day I found a note in my mailbox. Not in an envelope, just folded once. Elise's looping handwriting on the outside. "Can we talk?" Inside, a single sentence. "The kids really like it here and I'd like to discuss a longer lease." I stared at it for a long time. She wasn't asking me for a favor anymore. She was negotiating. And that was the first real shift. The moment I realized she'd started to see me not as the flaky little sister, but as someone who had something she needed and couldn't control. We met the next evening on the front porch of Unit B. The kids were inside, the glow of the TV flickering against the curtains, the muffled sound of animated voices carrying through the glass. Elise had a notebook in her lap, the expensive leather kind with a silk ribbon marker. "So," she began, crossing her legs, "Evan and I have been talking. The market's crazy and moving again so soon would be awful for the kids. We were hoping to lock in something longer." I leaned against the railing. "How long?" "A year," she said quickly, as if speed would make it more palatable. "But at the same rent, obviously." I let the quiet hang between us until she fidgeted. "1-year lease," I said finally, "with a modest rent increase. 2%. Her eyes narrowed. "That's more than we were expecting." "It's still below market," I replied evenly. "And it gives you stability. Plus, you'll have first option to renew before I list it again." She shifted in her chair, clearly not used to me holding ground like this. "You've really changed, Maddie." "I've learned how to run my business," I said. "And this is part of it." For a moment she seemed about to protest, but then she closed her notebook with a little snap. "Fine. We'll think about it." As she stood to go inside, Sloane burst out of the front door holding up a crayon drawing. "Aunt Maddie. I drew our house." I took it from her and smiled. A bright yellow rectangle with a green door and 2 stick figures in the yard. One had long hair. The other was short with messy scribbles for curls. "Which one is me?" I asked. "You're the one with the keys," Sloane said, pointing to the stick figure holding a big brown loop. Elise laughed lightly, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. He heard it too. Even her kids knew who held the keys now. By mid-March, the sheen of Elise's curated cozy rental life had started to dull. It began with small things: a late rent payment by 2 days, a note on my door about a weird sound in the dryer, a request to replace the perfectly fine porch light because it wasn't flattering in photos. I handled each one like I would for any tenant. Polite, professional, no extra favors. That was new for both of us. One Thursday evening I was in my living room reviewing a client's mood board when my phone buzzed. A message from Jasmine. You seeing Elise's stories? I opened Instagram and there it was. A video of Elise at some wine bar laughing with her friends. The caption read, "Landlord life is so stressful, face with rolling eyes, wine glass." I almost scrolled past, until I caught what one of her friends said in the background. At least it's your sister. She can't really evict you. The camera wobbled as Elise laughed. Exactly. I closed the app, set my phone face down and just sat there for a moment, letting the weight of those words settle. She still didn't believe me, not really. She thought the rent checks, the lease, the keys, all of it was just theater. She thought when push came to shove I'd fold. A week later, the dryer repairman I'd called left a note in my mailbox. Lint trap was packed solid. Told tenant to clean it weekly. I walked the note over to her door myself. Elise opened it halfway, phone still in her hand. You need to clean the lint trap, I said, holding the paper out. She rolled her eyes. Seriously? You came over here for that? Yes, I said. Because ignoring small problems makes them big ones. Her gaze sharpened. She knew I wasn't talking about the dryer anymore. For the first time since she moved in, Elise didn't have a quick comeback. She just took the note and closed the door. It was a small crack in the picture she liked to paint. And I intended to keep widening it. On the 2nd of the month, I opened the mailbox expecting the rhythm we'd established. A white envelope with Elise's looping signature across the flap. Nothing. By evening, a text. Bank hold. Annoying. We'll drop it tomorrow. Don't be rigid, slightly smiling face. I stared at the screen, then at the lease in my file drawer with its plain little line about a late fee after the 3rd. Paper doesn't care about emojis. On the 3rd, no envelope. Elise posted a boomerang from a nail salon, chrome tips flashing, captioned, "Self-care day. Don't judge." I printed an invoice, attached the late fee and slid it into her mailbox with a polite note. Per lease terms, please include the late fee with this month's payment. Thank you. 10 minutes later my phone lit up. Are you serious? She snapped. It's one day. You're charging me a fee. I'm charging my tenant a fee, I said. And it's 3 days. You know I've got a million things happening. The kids, the Lakeview mess, Evan's hours. Elise, I said gently, then automate it. Silence like I'd said something obscene. Unbelievable, she hissed and hung up. At 7 p.m. there was a sharp knock. She shoved an envelope into my hand hard enough to crease it. Happy now? I'm not happy or unhappy, I said, sliding it onto the console table. I'm running my building. She gave a bitter little laugh and stalked off, perfume trailing behind like a dare. 2 days later the school called. Hi, Ms. Hart. This is Pam from Oak Crest Elementary. You're listed as Sloan and Reed's emergency contact. We've been trying to reach their mom, but... I'm on my way, I said, grabbing my keys. The pickup line was already thinning when I pulled in. Sloan sat on a bench clutching a glittery backpack, Reed beside her with a paper crown askew on his head. Pam, a woman with kind eyes and a lanyard full of enamel pins, met me at the door. Power flickered during aftercare, she said. Phones were acting up. We finally reached Mr. Lyle, but he's at a conference in Round Rock. Sloan saw me and sprinted. Aunt Maddie. We made crowns. Reed barreled into my legs. I saved you a sticker, he announced, solemn as a notary. Thanks, buddy, I said, hugging them both, feeling them melt against me like they'd been holding their breath. Pam handed me a clipboard. Just sign here. And, thanks for coming so fast. She lowered her voice. We like having multiple contacts. Life happens. On the way out, a woman with a messy bun and a linen jumpsuit waved me down. You're Sloane's aunt, right? I'm Priya. My daughter's in her class. I love your front porch. The green door. I walk past it on runs. She smiled, then snapped her fingers. Wait, Finch and Kiln, yes? I edit the Austin Ledger's Sunday Home section. We're doing a Small Spaces Big Heart series. Would you be open to a feature? Think duplex revival, thoughtful landlord/designer, community angle. I blinked, Sloane's small hand warm in mine. Maybe. Great, she said, handing me a card. Email me. We'll send a photographer. At home, I made grilled cheeses while the kids told me everything about crowns and power flickers and a boy named Logan who eats glue but only sometimes. Elise finally texted at 7:42. Phone died. Everything okay? Picked them up. They're eating, I wrote back. 3 dots. Thanks. I was tied up. I looked at Sloane, feet swinging off my barstool, and Reed carefully aligning pretzels into a perfect constellation. Sloane slid a crayon drawing across the counter. A yellow house with a green door and 3 stick figures on the porch. One held a big brown loop. That's you, she said, tapping the loop. You always have the keys. Later, after bath time and bedtime stories on their couch because Elise was 5 minutes away for 40 minutes, she walked in with her hair damp and eyes tired, like the day had been chewing on her. Thanks, she said, voice small in a way I hadn't heard since we were kids. I nodded. Pam's number is on the fridge now. And I set up automatic rent reminders. It emails you 3 days before it's due. Her head snapped up. You can't. I can, I said. It's software. She opened her mouth, closed it again. For a second the air between us felt different. Less like a dare, more like a truce neither of us knew how to declare. As she walked me to the door, she glanced at the drawing on the counter. She draws you with keys a lot, she said, like it was an accusation and an apology at the same time. I know, I said, hand on the knob. And then my phone buzzed, an email from the Austin Ledger. Subject: feature confirmation plus shoot date options. I didn't open it yet. Because before any photos, before any glossy story in print, there was this one. A sister standing in a doorway she didn't control, and 2 kids asleep in a house that stayed warm because I paid the gas bill on time. The photographer showed up on a Tuesday morning with a battered leather camera bag and a smile that said he'd seen more than a few awkward homeowners try to hide laundry piles before a shoot. I'm Liam, he said, shaking my hand. Priya told me you've got a green door and a story. I'd spent the weekend polishing every inch of Unit A, not to impress Elise, but because the idea of my work in the Austin Ledger felt like a chance to show exactly who I was, without the filter of my sister's commentary. Fresh flowers in the kitchen, a bowl of bright lemons on the counter, the vintage armchair angled just so under the window. Halfway through photographing my place, Liam asked, mind if we get a few shots of the exterior with both units? Gives readers a sense of the whole property. I hesitated for a second. Sure. Let me tell my tenant we'll be outside. When I knocked on Unit B's door, Elise answered in a robe, hair clipped up, coffee in hand. What now? She asked, already suspicious. Photographers here for the Ledger piece. Just grabbing some exterior shots, I said. Her eyebrows rose. Wait, you're being featured? For this place. For my work. And the duplex, I said evenly. She glanced past me toward the porch where Liam was adjusting his lens. So my house is going to be in the paper? High property, I corrected gently. She stared at me for a long beat, then sighed. Fine. Just make sure the kids' bikes aren't in the shot. And maybe angle it so my curtains look nice. The shoot took less than 10 minutes, but Elise hovered the whole time, suddenly interested in the details. The lighting, the framing, whether Liam should get a shot from across the street. When we wrapped, Liam grinned. You've built something beautiful here. It photographs easy. That night, Priya emailed the draft of the article. The headline, Designing Home, How One Austin Creative Turned a Duplex into a Community Anchor. The story talked about my design business, my decision to invest locally, and my approach to creating spaces that hold people, not just things. There was a pull quote, home isn't a favor you give. It's a responsibility you keep. 2 days later, the feature went live. By lunch, my inbox was full of inquiries from potential clients, and the post had been shared over 100 times on Instagram. I didn't hear from Elise until that evening, just a short text. The article looks good. No emoji. No backhanded compliment. Just 3 words. And for her, that was practically a standing ovation. The article kept ricocheting around town longer than I expected. A realtor reposted it with heart emojis. A contractor I'd hustled drywall from in July sent a congratulations text with 3 flexed bicep gifs. Even my landlord-turned-friend down the block dropped off a plant with a note that said, Owner's Club suits you. Elise said almost nothing. Until the Tuesday the AC died. It was one of those spring days Texas throws like a curveball. 92 degrees by noon, the air already starting to feel like wet wool. At 1:17 p.m. my phone buzzed. AC is blowing hot air. Kids will melt. Help. No punctuation, no preface. Just a problem tossed like a grenade. I was on a job site 15 minutes away, measuring for floating shelves in a chef's kitchen where a Great Dane kept leaning against my legs like we were old friends. I handed the tape to the foreman, told him I'd be back in an hour, and drove to Zavala with the windows down and the radio turned up to drown out the drum line of my heartbeat. By the time I pulled into the driveway, Reed was on the front steps with a popsicle and a face like a tomato. Sloane fanned herself with a coloring book and announced, "We live in a desert now." Elise met me at the door, cheeks flushed, ponytail askew. "I called the number on the unit," she said, already defensive. "They said earliest they can do is tomorrow." "I have a guy," I said. "And he owes me for a rush job I covered in December." She blinked. "You have an AC guy?" "I own a building," I said, already dialing. 30 minutes later, Marco rolled up in his van, thumped the unit with a kind of fond contempt and found the culprit, a capacitor that had given up the ghost. While he worked, I filled a tub with a few inches of cool water and let the kids splash their feet, then set up a fan in the hallway and handed out fresh popsicles from my freezer. Elise hovered in the kitchen watching me move through the problem like it had come with a manual. "You didn't have to come," she said, half to the countertop. "I could have figured it out." "You called," I said. "That's how this works." When Marco left and the vents started exhaling cold air like a blessing, the house exhaled with them. Reed wrapped his arms around my waist in a sweaty hug. "You fixed the weather," he declared. "Not quite," I said. "Just your unit." Elise followed me onto the porch, where the hackberry's shade had finally advanced enough to make the steps comfortable. For a long time we just sat. The traffic hummed. Somewhere down the block, somebody practiced trumpet with an open window and a lot of courage. "I read it," she said finally, eyes on the street. "The article." "Yeah. The part about home being a responsibility you keep." He swallowed. "It's a good line." "It's true," I said. She nodded, still not looking at me. "Did you know Aunt Vi sent it to Mom?" With a clapping hands, clapping hands, clapping hands, and a "look what Maddie's doing." I hadn't. A small, ridiculous part of me wanted to print that text and frame it. Elise shifted, hands clasped, knuckles white. "I've been thinking about," she broke off, started again. "You know how when we were kids Mom would say you were free-spirited, and everyone would laugh? And I leaned into being the opposite. Responsible, dependable, whatever. It felt good being the one people expected things from." She drew a breath that sounded like it hurt. "I kept telling that story about you because it made my part simpler. If you're the mess, then I'm the order. If you're the question mark, I'm the period. I didn't have to look at my own cracks if everyone was busy looking at yours." The hackberry moved its shadow across our feet. I waited. She glanced at me, quick and raw. "I told people you were flaky. I implied you were struggling. I said you were in a transitional season like it was a punchline." Her voice wobbled on the last word. "I said it because it made me feel taller." There was something brittle snapping clean. "I know," I said, not unkindly. She flinched. "You know. I've got eyes. And ears. And an Instagram account." She laughed once, jagged. Then quieter. "I'm sorry." I let the word sit. I wanted to see if it would stain or sink in. "I'm not asking you to," she started. "I know," I said again. "But I hear you." We listened to the trumpet make a brave, lopsided run at autumn leaves. "Evan and I," she stopped, throat working. "He's been sleeping at his office. Says it's late patients. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I'm tired of pretending I understand things I don't." I looked at her profile, the way the sun found the soft, tired places no highlighter could fix. "You don't have to perform for me," I said. "I don't know how not to," she whispered. "Sometimes." We sat with that. After a while the front door opened and Sloane stepped out, chin up, serious. She held a sheet of paper with careful, determined creases. "We made a schedule," she said, handing it to me. "For Tuesday and Thursdays, we come to your house for homework time because Mommy says you are the queen of systems. And on Fridays we can help water your plants. Reed is good at plants because he talks to them." Reed appeared behind her, nodding solemnly. "They like compliments." Elise made an involuntary sound, half laugh, half sob. "Guys. It's a great schedule," I said gravely as if signing a treaty. Approved. Sloane beamed. Can we put it on your fridge? Absolutely. They ran inside my unit, feet pounding the hallway. Elise watched them go, then looked back at me. Her voice was steady when she spoke next. About the lease. He swallowed. We'll renew. With the increase. And we'll set up autopay. No more drama. I'll get you the renter's insurance certificate this week. Business language. Clear and clean. The music of our new arrangement. There's one other thing, she said. The PTA asked me to organize Nana's birthday redo, the one we pretended was intimate, so we could control the list. She winced at her own words. They want to do it at the community garden on Zavala. Potluck, no jazz trio, no heaters, just quilts and lemonade. I told them I knew someone who could string cafe lights without burning the place down. She looked at me, actually looked like she was ready to see whatever was there. Will you help? A breeze lifted the edge of the doormat. Somewhere the trumpet finally found its note. Yes, I said. I'll help. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat on the steps while the house behind us breathed cold air again, while the kids taped their schedule to my refrigerator with washi tape that didn't match anything. That night, after they went back next door, I stood in my kitchen and stared at the fridge. The schedule was crooked. I left it that way. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. Saw the feature. You famous yet? Also, your porch looked like a rom-com. Come over, I wrote. I've got lemonade and an apology-adjacent conversation to debrief. Before bed, I walked the property, habit now, checking latches, testing the motion light, listening to the hum of machines that keep a house alive. On my way back inside, I paused at the line where the shared path splits to 2 doors. 2 green doors, 2 sets of steps, 2 thresholds that know the story of every foot that's crossed them. The lie they told about me had always been neat and portable, easy to pack for trips and pass around at tables. The truth is heavier, built in place, bolted to studs. The truth is a duplex on Zavala with a hackberry throwing shade over kids who draw me with keys. The truth is that I am not their afterthought, their optional seat, their backup card. I am the owner. And some nights, when the neighborhood is quiet and the porch light catches the curve of the brass, I take the old key out of my pocket, the one with history in its teeth, and turn it in my hand just to feel the weight of a story I wrote myself.